W&T for helping us with the residential truck traffic and work group. In front of you, you received the agenda earlier this week from Joel. But we'll go right into it, and I'll open it up so that Joel can start the discussion around the total number of cameras that we would like to recommend as a part of this task force.
Yes, so I will pull the agenda back down here. And just as a reminder, the local legislation that will pass when this process ends, we are required by the original state legislation to recommend a number of cameras to limit the county to put into that local legislation. I sent around one of the summary of the locations we recommended at the last meeting, which in terms of how many actual spots for cameras there were 14 total. We have that document ready to pull back up if anybody wants to reference it or talk about it. There was one other location that we sort of are in flux about that could have been two other potential cameras, but which was the traffic circle location in Dundalk, but we weren't really sure if that was the best way to do it. And I know that Greg and his team are looking into the details of that, but that's sort of where we are with leading into discussion. And DeAndre, I know you asked some representatives from the police department to join us since Captain Brown was not able to make it, to maybe give us some background on what we have as the closest comparable thing in the county, which is speed cameras, and the sort of history we have of capping them in the same manner through local statutes. So with that, we have representatives here from the police department, I believe, but if they want to jump right in, if I've given them enough of an intro, feel free.
This is Corporal Wilhelm from Traffic Management for Captain Brown. I oversee all the speed camera and the red light camera for the police department. I was in one of these meetings, I think a month or so ago, with the captain. You guys had some specific questions about our process. I got in the email the first question you guys had about, like, how did we come up with how many cameras. I wasn't here in the very get-go of this program. I believe it started, speed was around 2011. And I think at that time they had like 11 cameras or 15, something like that. And it went up to 22 a few years later. And we've been at 36 cameras, but we have currently 89 different locations where we did all the background of making this a speed camera zone, if you will, pulling the crash data, getting speed surveys, going out and physically seeing the layout, if it is radar conducive or not. If we have a place to physically put a camera, so each of those sites had all that background information before we could make it a site, let alone then doing a press release and posting it on our internet site, that kind of stuff. But the number of cameras is 36, and that is governed by the county council. Honestly, I need more. The citizen demand for this is I'll be well over 100 operating sites by the end of the summer. But the county council has a limit of 36 cameras in the speed program. And so I can only have cameras at 36% of these locations, no matter how many times the citizens call here, or I get an email from the county exec's office or a county council member, or some constituent went through them, and it gets forwarded down to me, but I only being able to service 36% of the actual sites that need them, uh, that's an issue. But to answer that question more directly, it's the county council that set it at 36.
I would be interested in knowing, in order to be able to make a recommendation on the number of cameras, what's the workload associated with the number of cameras that you have? Does it require extra staff if you have more cameras to have to put out? Is it, and then my follow-up question to that is, do we water down the process if we have too many cameras at locations because they're supposed to be able to move around? How do we do the corrective action on the part of the truckers if it's just constant a camera there? What effect does that have on your staff?
All right. Well, out of our 36 cameras, out of the 89 current locations, I have a handful, 5 or 6 spots. Cromwell Bridge Road right there at Lock Raven, Providence Road right there at the Beltway, Goucher Boulevard, where I have cameras and I have never moved them. I've been doing this coming up on 2.5 years now. And my predecessor, Chuck, he told me he never, hey, once this went there, or say on Providence Road, that camera has always been there. Unlike the rest of the cameras, I rotate. So in order to spend time at different locations, I kind of came up with assigning, say, camera number 1, you are responsible for these 2 locations. Camera number 2, these 2. To make it a little more organized, and I can rotate it around. Now, personnel-wise, if we were to get more, some cameras, I can have up to 2,000 actual citations in a month. That's how bad a speeding problem is. Other cameras, it could be 60 violations for them to go through. So I don't know if comparing the speed camera program, how much personnel is needed, because I'm totally blind into this program. Unlike, I could call Montgomery County. How did you guys figure out and come up with, like, say, a ratio? So of seeing how much the manpower is. I would say this is a little more closer to our red light camera program, which we only have 10, also limited by the county council. But that takes a lot more man hours to physically view. The video is twice as long. It just takes longer to approve those potential violations and issue citations in the red light program than it does in the speed camera program. So that's why they can spit these citations out a little quicker on the speed side. It takes more of the watching of the video, where I would compare that to like the school bus camera program. Eventually one day we will go into somehow, and that will we use Montgomery County's program, and they divided how many citations they issued, divided that by their bus, came up with, point 0.33 per bus violations in a day. You just multiply that by how many buses we would have. So I would think maybe basing something like that, if you guys, I know that Baltimore City, I think, is the only other jurisdiction that has this. I don't know if there's another state. Somehow you guys would have to know how much manpower it would be, and not just in the police department of approving the citation, but for Office of Budget and Finance, they need a personnel too. In the county council, when they passed allowing us to move forward with the school bus camera program, they said they stipulated in there you need 2 personnel in the police department, 2 officers just for processing the citations, going to court, and doing a bunch of administrative things. So I don't know if there's another program or another agency program you guys could probably figure out your manpower needs, because I have no idea how much video this is or how much longer it takes to use this kind of citation versus our speed or our red light camera.
Hey, Andrea, can I
Questions? Oh, go ahead, Louis.
thank you. So just a couple of observations. So in the city, they have a 6-camera limit. Also, from the city council, they currently have 12 locations that they are incorporating those 6 cameras. And it started with just a 6 for 6, right, originally, and then they've added additional sites where they wanted to be able to rotate the cameras to, that they now reflect, on their website to show here's everywhere where they could be a truck camera. And if I can share screen, if it's possible for Joel to give me that ability, I don't know. I want to just show one thing that's about 3 years old from the city that just shows kind of the diminishing number of citations that you would expect to get from a camera location. Is that possible, Joel? I see where it just popped up. So could I just...
Yes.
Thanks.
Let me know if it works now.
Okay, so shoot, let's see here. I need to take you guys right here. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so this is a little bit dated, right? But this was about a year or so into when the city started launching its cameras, and these are the original 6 locations. And you'll see actually that by September 2018, now this is just 1 month's worth of data, but you see 2 of those original locations where actually they had no citations in those months, right? And that the average number of citations, except for Pulaski Highway, which is the 1.47, were basically 1 citation a day or less. So, the whole intent of this program is to drive down the number of citations, obviously, because you have less violators, right? And so I think you get that with this in a way that you might not get with speed or red light cameras, where people don't necessarily know that they're there, or you don't have travelers who are always in the same area like you might have on the trucking side, where when you have guys who are using cut-through locations, the behavior, I think, corrects itself pretty quickly with these cameras. So I'm not sure if that helps the conversation all about need and about manpower, but certainly, that's why the city started adding those 6 other locations where they wanted to place cameras, because they saw the problem go away in these other areas. So that's all I really wanted to just share. So I'll stop sharing there now.
Anybody else got any questions about? Okay, so here, no further questions about the camera locations. I want to open it up for discussion to see who would like to put a recommendation out about the number of cameras.
I'll put a recommendation out. Because I see we have 14 sites, it looks like, in the draft that Joel most recently sent around. What about a 1 to 2, like a 7? Right, that would be somewhat similar to what Baltimore City has right now in place, where they're using 6 cameras to monitor 12 locations. It's less than the 1 to 3 ratio almost that's in place on speed cameras in the county, it sounds like, where the officers have 36 for 89. I feel like 7 would probably be reasonable, also because we're saying there's 7 areas and 14 locations within those 7 areas. So,
and keep in mind, even though it's 14 locations, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, one of those locations will need, the recommendation was to have 2 cameras at one of those. Was it 2 cameras at one of those locations?
So it's flipped around. It's 14 total spots for cameras is what I'll say. So we had actually, let me see. I need to do the counting in my head. So there were 2 spots where we said only 1 camera because we didn't need it running in both directions. And then the Wise Avenue location we're saying needs 4 because of its specific nature to sort of catch that end to end. So in terms of like locations of roadways, I think that brings us to 8 actual locations. If a location is Benson Avenue is 1, Wise Avenue is 1, Belle Claire is 1, but 14 actual spots for cameras to go. If that makes sense.
It's actually
So-
7 locations.
It's okay. Sorry.
I just pulled up the document.
Hello?
So if we go with 7 and the police decide to do, or whoever's managing the program decides to do Wise, 4 of those 7 would be at that location. If they decide to do monitoring at that location in particular, and then you would only have 3 to go to one of the other locations. Correct?
Yeah. So I did want to ask then a or just to see if Lewis, on a sort of administrative side, is would the fact that it's an odd number create an issue? Because I don't know, do some of these locations sometimes have one in the city running in one direction but not an active one in the other direction?
Yeah, no, in the city, actually, they only have 6 total cameras.
Right.
Now, they can run them in either direction by posting that location online and, publishing it out there. And they don't tell you necessarily, it says in their publication, which may be in utilized in either direction. So they're sort of keeping you honest regardless of which way you're going, by simply determining which way they want to point the camera. So it's a total of 6 cameras for them.
So there wouldn't be any sort of issue at, having a camera running on the north side of one location, but not the south side, and then you move it around and where you need be.
So if you guys were looking at definitely wanting them in both directions at the same time, then you'd probably have to consider another ratio, right? So as opposed to just using them back and forth potentially.
Let me, if I can ask a question. When you guys are talking about cameras, so like a speed camera, it's 1 camera, and the 1300 block of Putty Hill Avenue, it's I have a camera that goes eastbound, and then I also have a site at the same exact place in that median for 1300 block westbound. If I wanted to do that, have a camera at both locations, so that's 2 cameras. Is this system, when you're talking about the 4 cameras, to do 1 location? So is it like, it's taking a picture when you first enter the zone, and then it's a second camera that takes the other picture? Does that count as 2 cameras, or?
That's, I guess, a good thing for us to clarify. I mean, functionally, what we've talked about based on DPW&T's input is the unique nature of the Wise Avenue location means that given that there is so much legitimate traffic going up and down that road for truck trafficking, in order to reduce administrative burden, if we could have 2 cameras running in either direction, that we just capture who's going to from end to end in, I don't know, 30 seconds or whatever the appropriate amount of time would be to let them to see who's going straight through instead of stopping, that it would sort of function a little differently and not just flag every single person who stops going either way on Wise Avenue and then goes off, turns off, and focuses on those who are using it to cut through. So really, I should say it would need 2 in a single direction to be functional. So Andrea's early example would mean like that technically we wouldn't necessarily need all 4 there at the same time if we only run in one direction, but we would need 2 for each direction.
Okay, so say you were going to target Merritt Boulevard from the Beltway down to wherever it dead ends, and like a college at Solace Point. So if you enter in on Merritt from the Beltway, there's a camera there, and then you need a second camera at the Solace Point at the college. So really, that's one. I'll call that one site. That entire strip of Merritt Boulevard. You need 2 cameras to do one location, correct?
So we're set for all of the examples except Wise Avenue. We don't need that. That is, I guess, just the way I'm understanding of how it's going to be done is that it'll flag somebody who hits the height if they're on a through route, and then they have the opportunity to come back and prove to the county if they are legally on that through route through our citation appeal process. But that single camera per direction wasn't going to work for the Wise Avenue. So what you're describing only would apply to that one Wise Avenue location. The rest of them are just 1 per direction.
Oh, I thought this program was like you have to enter camera A, the beginning of the zone, and then you get out of the zone at camera B, and then you were only in that zone for 32 seconds or 1 minute, so obviously you didn't make a delivery. Then you get a citation. But you're saying that a location could just have one thing where, hey, on, I hate to say streets that not everyone would know, but like say Silver Spring Road, right off Bel Air Road, you make a right turn on there, there's a no 3/4 turn through down to Honeygo Boulevard, but so you guys would take a picture of every vehicle that is 12'6" or whatever your height's going to be. As soon as you get in off of Bel Air Road, then it's up to us to determine. Yeah, I mean, how do you know that vehicle didn't stop at 1238 Silver Spring Road and make a delivery?
So that's been another big part of what we've done in earlier meetings is sort of talk out the citation system, and the city has an example that sort of gives us a starting point, and I think we want to definitely build out, but to they will have the chance to essentially appeal the citation through providing documentation that says they have a reason to be there, which would, in the overwhelming majority of the time, mean a delivery or a drop off or a pickup along that road.
But that will require them to do that like in a formal, like in a court, under the civil penalty.
No, so that what's I think this piece I'm 99% clear on, but that we would recommend pushing it into the existing speed camera ombudsman program, which I think is under OBF, to avoid the need for a court hearing.
All right. That sounds a lot more, because we would be approving a lot more potential violations, and then depending on that truck or whoever owns that vehicle, for them to come and defend themselves, and then have to go through OBF under the citation review. We do have that with speed camera. Before court, someone can petition OBF to have me review the citation again and this and that, but that would be a lot more manpower hours, because we'd be issuing more citations than, I mean, but I hate to go on like this. I know this is more exploratory or trying to set up fundamental things, but without being able to see, that's why I was under the impression, hey, you would get photographed at camera A, then you go to camera B, and then it's a time distance thing that you went through there in 2 minutes time. That's why I thought like the number of cameras, one spot would be 2 cameras, you entering and you exiting, and then us going, no, you went through that in 32 seconds. There's no way you made a delivery. Here's the citation.
So I'll say two things. The first one, maybe Lewis can confirm after I say the first and the second thing, but is that, you know, the city has used the you know, the system they were talking about of one camera per direction. And the sort of the second piece of that is I think it's the behavioral change, right? Is that like this will be a workload increase on the front end, but the idea and hopefully that graph earlier that showed that some locations weren't getting any citations flagged is that, you know, those that at least in the most critical areas we're significantly reducing the trucks being there at all. So, you know, people may never stop speeding or running red lights, but if we can, through a series of tools, enforcement being one of them that's coming out of this work group, through the cameras, change behavior, that our hope is it will not be as astronomical as it would be to create dozens of new speed camera sites, because we don't, you know, we're not doing this for revenue, we're doing it to change truck behavior. So, but maybe Lewis, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, I agree with that, Joel. I think there are some locations that you're going to see really rapid de-escalation, which is hopefully going to free up the use of that camera. I also think that the only location that requires the kind of more sophisticated analysis, looking at point-to-point time, is Wise Avenue, right? The way that we have that structured, and that the other locations, it's really just were you on the route, and you know, just looking at that one situation. Like I'm thinking of John's location, for example, right? That's going to generate, I think, you know, a number of citations right at the beginning, and then ideally really drop off very quickly. But it doesn't require a point-to-point examination of any sort. So where Wise, I think we put that in place because there was so much legitimate truck traffic there, whereas the traffic that John's experiencing should not be on that road ever.
Okay. So I think that was a really good discussion around the cameras. We had a recommendation on the floor for 7 cameras. So I wanted to ask if anybody else had feedback on the 7 cameras. I'll go for the 7 cameras. Anybody that does not want to go for seven cameras, do you want to go for less or more? If I don't hear anything, I'm going to assume everybody's good with a recommendation of 7 cameras.
I'm good with the 7 cameras. The one problem I have with the previous conversation is that Lewis talked about how we went back to like 1 violation per day per camera after they got caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that wouldn't take a lot of man hours to do, because it would only be one ticket, 1 citation per day once they got it over the beginning of it. And Baltimore City gives warnings for the first 30 days. So they wouldn't be contested anyway, but that would sure change a lot of minds on what to do the next 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point, John. I didn't even think about the fact that there is a provision in the law that requires that warning notice first, and hopefully you never even have to get to contesting because
Mm-hmm.
behavior changes early.
Yeah, they have a 30-day warning up here on Benson Avenue for the camera.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like our recommendation is going to be 7 cameras with 14 locations. Sergeant Smith and Corporal Wilhelm, thank you so much for being willing to come and at least give us some background information to kind of understand what the thought process was, even if it was, you know, not what we thought it would be. We appreciate you all coming and presenting to us and taking time to share that information with us. Yeah. So you're more than welcome to stay as a part of the group and hear out the rest of the meeting, but I wanted to thank you all for being willing to do that for us.
All right, no problem. Just the only thing about the manpower is you know, just like in the school bus, how we were trying to figure out, we came up with 2 officers, for, you know, site location stuff, all that kind of stuff, is just, when this would come to a county council bill, that had that in there about covering for the manpower hours, not just in the police, but also Office of Budget and Finance. You know, they would probably need at least another person, 40 hours or 30 some hours, for civilian to handle the load, admin, load. But it would at least be 1 officer, if not, 2 officers to handle, I think, what my mental picture of this is.
So DeAndre, if you'll indulge me 30 seconds, because I think I have a positive answer to that is, you know, we haven't, later this meeting, we'll be just running through sort of a summary, since this is our last really substantive meeting for this, of what the recommendations are, and the topic of budgetary needs for your department, for the actual procurement of the cameras, for the, you know, changing over of the signage, if and where that needs to be done, has come up quite a bit. And I think, at least in sort of the draft that I'm kind of putting before the group today, and hopefully will, or am interested in reaction to it, but it did include one specific note saying, you know, we're recommending that you make sure the police department and DPWT has, you know, adequate resources to ensure that new signage, new staff, procurement of cameras, you know, are accounted for, and that we're not just creating a new system without really checking how expensive it's going to be. And so, you know, that doesn't necessarily create anything binding, but I personally thought it was important to include that in there so that the county council isn't looking at this in a budgetary vacuum.
All right, any other, questions, on the police department side, or are you guys good?
Committee, you all have any questions you want to ask? Any further questions? Hearing none, we thank you so much.
No problem, thank you.
All right, we appreciate it.
All right.
All right, the next section of the agenda is the route map GIS application presentation. Again, we want to thank Doug and his team, Andrea, for being with us today. And Doug, I will turn it over to you for this part.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for the opportunity to share the GIS technology again with you all. I was going to say, Joel, can you give me the ability to share my screen? Thank you. Right now, you're probably just seeing a bunch of buffalo. I've got to go back to my county machine and go back here. So this is the application. You've seen this already once before, at least with the work that we've done. What's currently represented on the map can be gotten by these tools that are up here in the upper right-hand corner. And so the one where you would see what's on the map, there's kind of 2 ways. One presents a legend. So you can see we've got interstate highways turned on, recommended through truck routes, and then these are actually the county restricted roads, and the green indicates that it's got a time restriction, and the blue is basically a full-time restriction. So just a little bit about the interface. You could type in an address here, and it will take you to that. And actually, if I could spell it right, it will take you to a location. You can see it's already starting to try to fill in a location. So I could click on one of these and it will automatically zoom you in. This is one of those applications that works with the mouse wheel. So you can zoom in and out just using the map wheel. You can see there's our proposed routes and some of our roads with restrictions. Some of the buttons over here, this will take you back kind of to where we were at home. You can also use the plus and the minus. You know, if I want to zoom in, I hit the plus, and if I want to zoom out, I would hit the minus. So that's kind of the basic functionality over here. And then what we would do with this application, I'm back over here on the right-hand side now in this area. is we would provide some language for the about. We have the ability to fill this out. We can put, you know, background on the program, information about what the data means and where the data came from. You could put information about the citation process. You know, we've got a clean slate here to do with whatever we want for the about. You could also just simply put a link to a website so that you weren't trying to maintain information in two locations. But it's a county standard that we include this about widget and then put some meaningful amount of information in there. Another tool that's here is the print tool. So if somebody was, you know, traversing through, say they wanted to go over on the east side here, we could zoom in over on this area of the county and then produce a map that would be downloadable and printable local. So the mapping has a lot of capabilities at this point. It does allow for a user to create page sizes from everything from 8.5 by 11 to 34 by 44, either portrait or landscape. They can put their own titling on here and things of that nature. So it's a really robust printing engine at this point. Another one of the tools is the ability to change the base map. So if you would like to see the county's current imagery, which is the 2020 imagery, you can turn that on. If you wanted something a little older, you could go with the 2017. If you want to look at somebody else's base map, you can see there's a whole lot of them here that we have access to. You can do that as well. I'm going to change back to the street map that we were using early on, if I can find it in the list. There it was. And so it's just on demand. And all of this data is the live data from the at least the lines over here, the imagery. All these base maps are coming from a service from our software provider, whereas the only two things we really have put up here are the Baltimore County imagery. Those are the two that are ours that are being served from county servers, as are all these lines. I've already talked a little bit about the legend that tells you what the symbols mean on the map. The other thing you have is control over which data you want to show. So if you didn't really want to look at interstate highways or recommended truck routes and all you wanted to look at was restrictions, you certainly can do that. And so there's that capability as well. It also allows you access to all of the county data that's available through our data services. And you can see right as of, and I've never seen the number this high, but it's interesting that it is that high. But we've got 424 data layers that could, in theory, be added to this map. So it, you know, the county is making a very concerted effort to try to make data available so that it's accessible to the public. So when we build an application for a specific business process like this, we tend to limit what is automatically brought in. And then with this add data tool, and actually all of these tools are standard tools that we put on our applications. With this, we can bring in additional data if you wanted to do that. So if you wanted to see something like, I'll use zoning for example. If I wanted to bring in the county zoning data, all I would have to do is search zoning. I would go down here and see that here's the zoning data, the current data, and then I would just simply click add, and then here's the zoning information. And then, you know, I can click on any one of these given areas and find out that actually this area is DR 10.5. So it's just a capability that we have. I'm going to go back into this and turn the zoning off. We also have the ability to the tool to allow them to draw stuff on the map, so they could actually sketch in their route that they want to take and then make a map of that if they wanted to. And you can see they have the ability to put points, lines, or polygons or text on their map. So that ability exists as well. And then lastly, they have the ability to create what are called bookmarks. And so they can put a bookmark in. And so I could create this bookmark and rename it and call it East Side. And then if I close out of my session correctly, this would be persistent and I can always get back to that. So as an example, if I went back to home and went out to the full county, and then I come over here and I click on east side, and you can see it zooms in and out. So people could customize this interface in a limited way for their own use within their organization. So this is the interface as it's currently existing today. Any questions I can answer?
Hey, Doug, this is fantastic. I have a question actually. So on that east side example you gave where somebody might bookmark a given geographical area, it would still if they left and came back to it and something had changed, it would reflect those most current updates. Is that correct?
Yeah, the process that the county uses right now is so the data, I'll use the truck restriction data. So the no through truck data that the county, that we've developed in DPWT, that sits in a development environment in the DPWT production server. We edit the data, it goes through a process, and then it gets moved over to the county publication server. And so right now we're on a monthly cycle for that. But yes, the next time they came in, if that data had been updated, you would be getting the most current information. Yes.
Thank you. And I actually have one other question, if that's okay, DeAndrea. Just as a reminder, I apologize. This is probably more for Joel. All of the camera locations, are they all on blue restricted routes? Or I see you shaking your head. Yes, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to revalidate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and once you all settle the camera locations, we've already harvested what Mia was mapping at the last meeting we had, and we're bringing that in as a new data layer, and that will shortly be added to this application. So and what we'll be able to show is both the locations where cameras could be, as well as the active camera locations. So that, that capability exists.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Doug? Hearing none, Doug, I think as always, you all have done a great job with this, and I think it's an added benefit that we can give to as a recommendation to council for this. And I like the fact that it's so interactive, and it can be changed and updated on a regular. So that's pretty exciting as a part of the recommendation. So I thank you all for the work that you've done on it.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. And I need to include Andrea Rogers, who's one of my staff that has taken over responsibility for the application and the data in the back end. So she'll be doing the support for this.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you both.
Yeah. All right, we are right on time. So the next section of the agenda is the route map review. And Mia and Joel are probably going to bring up the same map that we just had and go over that a little bit, just so that we can become familiar with it again.
Right. Thank you. And echo what DeAndrea said. Doug is and his team have been working, doing phenomenal stuff to help us walk through this. And there's a lot of knowledge gaps I have about GIS and data and about how a lot of this mapping works. And they've not only done an incredible amount of work, but been super patient with me and in walking me through it and in doing different versions of this until we sort of figured out what it was we wanted. And that is a good segue into why we're including this as a big chunk of the agenda. What we noticed sort of when we saw the completed app was that there are, I think in the document I sent out, I sort of flagged two things, but it's really three things about what we did. So, right, so the existing, blue and green here those are our restricted routes, right? We that's all already done through regulation. What we sort of added and then, pumped into this GIS form were these preferred routes. And I think before we really got to, or speaking for myself, before I really got to see this in this GIS format, I don't know if I've really given enough thought to what exactly this this meant, and there are a few issues to flag with preferred routes as they currently stand. One is you can more easily see we have a few areas where things are discontinuous, right? If these are routes where we're suggesting people go because we want them to be avoiding the areas of concern, the areas they're supposed to avoid, uh, are we really giving them good advice if we just have a blank spot here to here or here to here, or where the case may be? So that's one. The second piece is that there are a few areas where there are some state restrictions in place overlapping with our preferred routes, and I have another tab up here that shows our original PDF from the interim report. I'll zoom in a little bit on the first example I want to talk about. But you can see here this black dotted line, and we were worried that in some of these cases, having Baltimore County put out a map that says these are our preferred routes, these are where we want trucks to go, would be problematic if the state saw that and came back and said, wait a minute, but we have a really big weight clearance here, really, we have a really low height clearance here. And so while, there are certainly on a case-by-case basis places where it would be okay for trucks to travel on those roads unless they're above 14 feet or X number of pounds. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. That doesn't necessarily mean we should have them listed as a place where we are encouraging them to go, because it puts us in a little bit of conflict with the state. And then the third one that I think is a little less obvious looking at it, but really worth thinking about, is sort of from a constituent perspective. In Baltimore County government should constantly be thinking about what this means for our constituents, and we want to look at a few spots where we say, are folks going to look at this and say, why are you listing, even if it's a 4-lane road, why are you listing this thing cutting through my residential community as a preferred route? Why are you directing trucks to go here? And that may be, in some of these cases, a very valid question. Why does it need to stay on the map as a preferred route? That doesn't mean they can't ever go there, but we think the connotation is that if we put a red line on this map, that means that we are encouraging it to go there, and we don't want to, we don't want to do that, nor do we want the perception that we are doing that. So that's sort of my intro here. I hope that was I hope that was clear and made sense. But unless folks have questions on the broad concept, I'm just going to jump right into the first example, because we have 19 spots that we flag that we sort of want just an up or down from the work group on. Keep it on, get rid of it, or change it a little.
So I know I'm not part of the actual work group, but do you want us to, are we going to vote on these one at a time, or are we going to do them in bunches, or do you want to get to the end and wait for questions? How do you want to do that?
I figured we would just look at them one by one, and I mean, we'll sort of build on this later, but I think we're for everything we've done so far, we're going to take a sort of a summary of that and do kind of an official vote at the next meeting in August. But I think sort of unofficial consensus one by one is how we're going to do it. So I would think if you have like big picture questions now, would be good to ask. But I think if they're one by one, feel free to ask them at each time, because I'm gonna want a thumbs up or a thumbs down from folks at each one.
I have one sort of big picture one on the issue where there's a conflict with the state. Joel, is it consistent that it is a conflict for over-dimensional? And what I mean by that is overweight and over height, for example. Are those the kind of conflicts that you run into in all of those circumstances, or does it vary pretty widely?
I think that for the most part, it is one of those two categories. There are a few that where preferred routes overlap with state restrictions that we actually didn't even flag at all, because I think they may be like a trucks need to go 40 and all other vehicles go 50 miles per hour type of thing. So
Okay.
and that's like some of those are interstates, so we didn't flag those. I think I will. Doug did a pretty good job in this one of marking up, right? So the green is on this example here is what is the is a weight restriction. The purple, where's the purple spot? Where this is, well, over here it's a height, a vertical clearance. I think in all of the ones we flagged, we either have that green marker or the purple marker. So I believe the answer is yes, but while I'm going through for the state restriction examples, we can double check to make sure that's the case.
Okay, because there might be an easy way to work around that basically just connotates very clearly that the Baltimore County preferred routes are for non-permitted loads in illegal, normal vehicle configurations. So that way they know that if they're operating outside the scope of normal configurations, and drivers know what that means, right? Depending on how many axles you have and what the legal height and weight limits are, then you put the onus on them in effect to find the appropriate route if they are outside normal configurations.
Interesting. I am super glad you said that because that was not, I wasn't really aware that that was the solution we had here. So that should probably go into your considerations I think it's a half a dozen or less where I mean, this is the one on screen right now where this is the case. So in that case, maybe when we're doing our, should this one stay or should it go, we should just base it more on, does it need to be on as preferred route or not, and not necessarily base it on the overlap if you're saying that there is language we can include to sort of preempt that.
And you have, like, this is an example where there's a corresponding interstate that runs adjacent, right? So there's an option for them.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, well that's good to know. So I mean, with that, I will get, because that's really good segue into this first one, and I think this example here along York Road is pretty unique. But correct me if I'm wrong, work group members. I believe that there's a limit here because this was frequently used to bypass a way station. Does that sound correct?
I don't actually know. So is that 83?
Yeah. So
You might want to zoom in slightly, Joel.
yeah. So the thick red is 83, but we also have a red preferred route on York Road. So, restrictions aside, it may also be worth thinking, do we really need, 83 as a preferred and York Road as preferred?
Yeah, Joe, I remember that specific one. That is because there's a way station down on below that on 83. And what the state was finding is that people were getting off at 439 here and then going down to the next exit so they could bypass the way station. That's why it's a state restricted route that has no real geometry issues. It's just that they don't want them bypassing that way station.
So should the preferred route be 83?
It should be, because that's a different kind of circumstance than the one I was anticipating, with size and weight issues. And we don't want to encourage people to bypass way stations.
And I think this one is unique. I think this is probably the only example we flagged this like this. And then, so I'll, please stop me if there is not consensus, or if I'm running too quick. I just, but I'll keep moving if I think I have it. So if folks are okay with pulling this stretch off, the part two of this question was the need for this southern piece here to be on as a preferred route as well. I don't know if it has that same issue, but if it, if there's a need for it to stay, if there's a problem with it staying, if folks have feelings on that.
So I would keep it on as an option for local deliveries. That is, you know, it's going to require some attention on the driver's part because he needs to know that when it pierces 83, that going further northbound, it's no longer included. Is that an access point onto 83 from, I know you guys can't see my cursor, where the dotted line begins, basically?
I might be able to see that on the GIS version here.
I don't think it is, Joel.
No, it just runs.
It goes under. Oh,
Yeah.
no, never mind. There's an interchange.
Okay, then yeah, to me, I would run it right up to 83 interchange, and that way they have a local option that's very clear to them. You know, if they have a need for any kind of local delivery, but then we're trying to avoid that scenario where they're trying to bypass this game.
Okay, I will, again, I'll say, I will assume silence means consensus with what was said, so I'll keep moving, but just, you know, virtually raise your hand through shouting at me if you want me to stop. So I think for this one, we'll pull off the top piece. We will leave the bottom piece, York Road here. The next one is down here. This is a good example of what a lot of them look like, and the question of necessity of extending something like this to somewhere else, or, you know, if there are other ways into Harford County over here, do we really need this southern chunk here at all if it just meets a dead end?
Well, I don't think we should have it if it just meets the dead end.
I would agree with that, recognizing that if they have to go south there, they're allowed to legally go south, right?
Exactly.
You're just not putting it on as a preferred route.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, and I'm thank you for reiterating that too. I think, you know, what we're doing right now is not legally binding, just more of a how we communicate this. So thank you. So the next one is not very different, is this piece here. I wasn't sure if there was any use for vehicle drivers, since I know Baldwin is an area with some population, but not, from what I'm remembering from the map with the industrial piece on it, not a lot of retail manufacturing or anything up there. So I'll just throw out, does anybody feel strongly about not removing the southern piece? Alrighty. Then we are going to move over a little more towards the center of the county here. There is one, and you'll probably tell I sort of have areas where I have my sort of opinions on these, and I do think some of them are easier than others. So I think this probably falls into that example. Is this Warren Road? Yes, here we go. My thought here was I don't see any reason not to continue this one. This is a lot of manufacturing. There's probably a lot of reasons for trucks to be going through here, and not to just continue Warren Road as a preferred route until it reaches, I think this is York again, seemed logical. Okay. Then where is Delaney Valley Road? Here we go, over here. This one, I know Delaney Valley Road was particularly this part east of, is it Jarrettsville? Yes. Oh, sorry. Is one that we only received a handful of that original survey we did a while ago, results that were outside of District 1 and District 7, but this was one that a few people flagged as an area where they didn't love the volume of trucks here. Again, as Lou said, not legally binding, not saying they can't go here, but my thought is I don't see a need to continue this little piece anywhere else. Okay. And then last sort of central county one down towards the city, Bologna Ave here, and actually Doug, can you remind me how to pull up the zoning layer? Because I think having like that manufacturing piece.
Sure, if you go up to the, I call it the broken clipboard, just to the left of where you're at right now,
There we go.
click there, and then type in zoning in the search. Hit enter. And then there it is, almost at the bottom. Well, now it's moving around.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Zoning.
You want zoning, not zoning history as well. There you go.
I was wondering, so in the PDF version, you have the pink highlighted for like the manufacturing. Is there any way to do that?
Not on the, because this is a map service versus a feature
Gotcha.
service, so we can't symbolize on the fly here.
Okay, that not a
Sorry.
problem. I hope. Nope.
We did though have the GIS app that had like that we used to make the recommendations that Doug made for us. So we could go off of, I can check if there's manufacturing zones on my end, but I can pull up that
Okay, yeah, that
map
that
just
might be
to,
good.
and I can always show it if we need to.
Right, because I just so I don't necessarily want folks to just believe everything I say about residential versus manufacturing without having it to back up. But for this particular example, we thought pulling this off, given the amount of existing nearby routes that could take you to the same places, and the sort of the narrow nature of this road, the residential stuff nearby. So our thought was to take Bologna Avenue here off as a preferred route. Okay. Now I'm going to move over to sort of the northwest part of the county. So some of the stuff I've shown before. So I'll jump back and forth because some of these have state restrictions. If you will bear with me. So with the information that Lewis gave us, perhaps this isn't, or we can sort of do a 2-for-1 here, but this is Butler Road here, and is this Falls Road here? Yes, it is. Guess posing to the group for either example, if there's a reason to pull these off. You can see that the Glendon has a little bit of commercial and manufacturing activity down here. But I'll open up if folks have strong opinions either way.
But in these cases, we believe that the state restriction is a size or weight restriction. Is that correct, Joel?
Yes.
Yeah.
The green is, which is the green? Sorry. Green is a weight restriction.
Okay.
For
We
both of
don't know
these.
what those specific weight restrictions are by chance, do we?
That might be a question I have for Doug.
I did not include that level of detail in that data layer.
Okay. Okay. No, I just think that we just have some kind of disclaimer about state restrictions in certain areas for certain vehicles over dimensional size and weight, and that it's on them then to validate.
And this was all, every one of these that were mapped by this, where we went in and mapped the state restriction, they came right off of the state bulletin for Baltimore County. So I agree with your statements earlier, Lewis, about, we developed some kind of a caveat that says you're still responsible for adhering to the state restrictions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, unless there is any objection from other folks, then I think both of these we can remain on the map as preferred routes. I did want to look at the other section of Falls Road here. Actually, both of these examples are very similar. On this, I believe, is Mount Carmel Road. My first thought looking at it was they're so close to completing to the county border. Why not just finish them off? I mean, there's probably need for trucks to be traveling to Hampstead and up towards the state line. So that was where I was sort of leaning on this one.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Hey, Joel, just so you know, while you're making that notation, I did go back to my work machine, and the zoning layer, you can actually turn on the labels. So if you were to able to turn the zoning back on, it wouldn't colorize it, but you would at least be able to get the zoning classification. So, and you just have
Gotcha.
to click on the ellipse, the dot 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 in the legend, and it'll let you do that. It's just turn on the show labels.
Okay. I may ask you to say that one more time. I'm just
Okay.
just making sure I'm taking my notes right here. So complete. Okay. Let me jump back to.
I also have the map up too, so if we have questions on a particular area, I can also just share the screen. At the moment, there's no manufacturing zones around where we're looking.
Gotcha. The last one in sort of the northwest quarter here was this long stretch, which is Park Heights. I think this gets a little, or for much of the stretch, it's a 2-lane road. I would really defer to Lewis to see if he knows anything about the need for trucks to travel here, because I know it is fairly residential along this area, but there may be a need somewhere there.
Yeah, I'm not really that familiar with that area. And again, in that scenario, if you're telling them to use that route, but then it ends,
Right.
It's still not we're not making the road illegal to them, right? And
Right.
so I don't know that you necessarily want them to travel along it, certainly. I'd probably just take it off, to be honest with you.
Right, and I guess the one other consideration I didn't think about too is not just disencouraging in residential areas, but also not giving them easy paths to places that are already restricted. So, turning on the Case Road here. So if you and everyone else is comfortable taking it off, then we will take that one off. Let us move a little south now. This one, I believe this stretch of Old Court Road is mostly residential, but there is some commercial and manufacturing stuff. I think it's this group right here. There's like a body shop out there and a few other things. So I didn't really have a strong opinion either way on if we finish this off or if we take it off. See what folks think about that. And let me know if you want me to zoom in or.
Is that residential, Joel? Like if you kept following that to the right, does that look like it turns residential? It looks like right below where it says Randallstown, it looks like it says Northwest Hospital.
No, I think this is actually a pretty crowded. I think there are a lot of residences, but also a lot of retail stuff along Liberty Road here.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it made sense to extend it. Either way, it ends, right? And I don't think that's the county line. So that might just be one that you want to, or it is the county line.
Yeah, so this is Howard, but I guess but into Woodstock, there's not a lot of that part of Howard that it'd be going to, and I guess one could argue, why don't you just get on the Beltway onto 70 at that point, or take another way? So.
Yeah, I'd probably be inclined to take it off myself then.
Okay. Alrighty. And then this small piece of Security Road here, that
There is, is one piece of manufacturing like right off of Old Court Road, but that's the only there's just like one segment of that, but everything else is not manufacturing.
is it this little guy right here?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, yeah. I think when I looked at that the other day, it was like a body shop and a few other warehouse type things, but not a large complex. So this one, I wasn't really sure what to make of this. I'm not even sure how this got on here in the first place, but this is security. My instinct on these small little pieces was just to pull them off, unless there's some other reason. Okay.
So just so you know, something like that got on there because that part of Security Boulevard is a state road.
Oh, so we're sort of seeing the end state maintenance
Yes.
Stark County right here. Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense. Gotcha. Okay, well then we'll pull this little piece off here. I think moving into Catonsville, there's another similar piece here. This part gets a little strange, but just this tiny bit going into UMBC, we didn't think there was a need to direct folks there, since you're not going to go anywhere here except for into the university. Alrighty. And then let's jump to the other side of the county. Over to, let me just look at my labeled map in front of me here. This one I think we actually talked about before. Help me find where, I think this is, yes. So Golden Ring into Kenwood. If I'm remembering correctly, we had some back and forth, the original map conversation about should, you know, is sending folks this way gonna inevitably send them to these problem areas? I don't know how to best base the need for this to really be here with the stuff surrounding it.
So is your recommendation to remove it? Because you say you don't think that.
I guess if there's not a compelling reason to keep it, I think just the reason I'm leaning that way was the proximity to all this other, to 695 and 95 and all the other stuff around here.
There's
Because
like
they can
one-
use 695 and all the other stuff to get to where they need to go.
Say it again.
I said, because what's the other option if, and I know it dead ends there, but
Yeah.
What's the other option?
I guess if we wanted to continue over through Fullerton or through Kenwood, but again, you're reaching points that you can get to through other primary or other preferred routes. So I guess, yeah, there isn't a lot of need now that I'm talking out loud.
There is
Then I
one
recommend
tiny
removing it.
manufacturing area right there, but that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll pull it off unless somebody raise any objections. Okay, we are more than halfway, way more than halfway through. We have 5 of these left. South East Boulevard. Where am I looking? Over here. That here? Yes. So this one, I know that there's some stuff off of Back Neck River down here that might make sense. Again, I think I may have originally flagged this one for a state restriction. So that may change the calculus on here. Let me zoom out. And I'm actually, this may have been the only other example where I didn't see an identifier for weight or height here, so I'm not sure what exactly this is, but yeah. Doug, can you provide any insight as to what this might be?
Oh, I guess I should turn my mic back on. Which one of the two purples are you pointing at? Sorry.
Sorry, I'm actually I'm looking at this Southeastern Boulevard here, which doesn't have a purple or green marker on it, but it just has the dotted state restriction line.
I think it's because the state has a restriction that says trucks aren't allowed to go back in there towards that area. That was a state restriction going back that way.
Oh, then that, well, that to me sounds like we should probably pull it off then, unless, I mean, it doesn't necessarily lead anywhere. I think, again, as we've been saying, this isn't prohibitive, but if there's not really it's not redirecting folks anywhere from,
Right.
so if, unless there's objections, I guess we'll mark that as a takeoff.
Take off.
Okay, and then this one, despite what I just said about dead ends and reasons to go there, let me go back to the GIS version here. Eastern Avenue, if I guess if there's any reason to leave a dead end on as a preferred route, this might be the only example. I mean, it may be semantics at that point, but it is, we did flag it as a dead end. There's certainly reasons for trucks to be along that road though, so I don't really have strong opinions here.
Well, and I know in the last meeting, we talked about, we didn't want to expand we didn't want to include a lot of county roads to say this is our preferred route, but certainly it would make sense that if they were heading east on Eastern Avenue and then turn on to Ebenezer and follow that back over into the White Marsh area. But I know we're not going to add Ebenezer, but I agree with you, Joel, about it should stay on there, even though it's a spur.
Yeah,
So-
it gives them guidance that they should go on that road, right?
Yeah.
That's the preferred road that you want them on, since there's a decent amount of activity there.
Right. I mean, did we, I'm trying to recall if we talked about Ebenezer. I mean, it's a road with no restrictions. This is, a non-binding way to list it. If it would make more sense logically to just sort of finish it off as a circular thing and add Ebenezer as well. I don't know this part of the county quite as well, but if that would be more logical, we could potentially add Ebenezer as its own preferred route.
Yeah, I think we were concerned about the impact to the neighborhoods by specifying that as a road and the black blowback that we would get from those communities.
Okay. And now that appreciate everybody listening to me think in real time here, but now that I say that does also make sense in that we wouldn't necessarily want them to think they should be taking Ebenezer or what am I looking at here? Whatever this road is, that's probably more appropriate. Is that White Marsh Boulevard? Yes. So maybe we just do leave this as a dead end to say you guys should be here and here, and not encouraging here, not encouraging Ebenezer. So we will leave this as is unless I hear any objection. Okay. One which I think is tiny but actually very, very important, down here, this little piece of Belclair Road that winds you right up at a restricted route here. I probably on because that's state portion of the road, but I don't think it's a great idea to leave this on here, given that this flows right into the areas that are the very reason for this work group's existence.
Yeah, agreed. Pull that off. It's just confusing.
Yeah. Okay. Almost done here. We're pretty close. What part? I marked down Sparrows Point, but I'm trying to remember which piece of it. Is it this? Okay, yes. This is just a tiny little thing here that must just be the state maintenance, goes to this point, but I don't think there's a reason to keep this little stub here.
That's exactly why it's there, Joel. It's that
Yep.
little piece of Sparrows Point Road that's state.
Okay, so we will pull that off, and then the last piece I think also small, but also very important based on what Ron has told us previously about trucks going to Edgemere, is pulling this piece off here so that there is nothing encouraging folks to go into Edgemere and instead keeping them on North Point or Bethlehem. Okay, so we'll put that as a remove. And those are locations. I will send around a summary document of what each decision was and describe each point in the map. I was, should be able to get that out on Monday, and hope the folks can give me feedback soon if they think it doesn't reflect what we just talked about. But that, I think this will end up making a map that looks much cleaner, that is a little more logical and reflects concerns about constituents, keeping things clean for vehicle operators using it. So thank you for walking or letting me walk through this, and I think we're in a good spot with the map now.
Great. Thank you, Joel. The work that you all do behind the scenes to make sure that all of this is going to be right when we actually turn it over to the council is appreciated. So thank you all for your patience going through those 19, but it needs to be right when we turn it over to council. So with that, we are pulling it up the rear, and the last item is the final recommendations and final steps. We got one more meeting. I will say that I've seen the drafts layout of the report that Joel is getting ready to cover, and I think we're in a good position in terms of putting it together so that at the next meeting you can kind of see where we are. So I'll give Joel an opportunity to talk about the outline that we have. And when you go through the outline, you'll notice that we have hit every item that the charter has asked us to review. It's taken a couple of months, but we have gone through all of the 7 sections. We added the 7th in terms of the resources, but I'll give Joel an opportunity to talk about that, and then we'll talk about next step for that final meeting that we'll have, where we'll have a vote to make sure that we're all on the same page before we actually deliver the final document.
Yep. So I think Mia's going to pull up what's going to be on screen is one of the documents we sent out earlier with a little addition at the top. So I think pulling this all together, it's important to remind folks of this all kicked off from a process at the state legislature to set up this work group and hash these things out. And it I'm simplifying it by saying it asked us to do 8 things, but it's essentially that there were 8 things that it specifically named for us to do here. And so I wanted to put those back up, and then we sort of chunked out what our work was into 7 sections. And so what we have on screen here, which I can send out the updated version as well after, is those original sort of 8 tasks put out by the state legislation, and then where they correspond to in our what we're proposing as the recommendations. And then we wanted to give you a first look of this at this meeting, and I think we will use the rest of July to flesh the actual language of the report out. But we would want to know very soon, and I will follow up, include this all in email, if these recommendations in their big picture form don't match what you think that we have been doing, please let me know as soon as possible, or if we need to discuss whether it's over email or bring to the group, when we meet in August, because this is mine and Mia's best effort to capture what we think we've done, but this is the work group. You guys vote on whether these are the recommendations, and don't let my memory be, be the final say on what we've said about this. So I'll just say that, and I figured to just use the next few minutes just to briefly walk through it. I think a lot of these are self-explanatory, but given sort of section by section, if folks have questions. So maybe if you could scroll down a little bit to section 1 is kind of at the top there. So this one we just sort of finished up. We were tasked by the state legislation to essentially turn over a map using best technology. You've seen that we're on our way to do that technology here. We just complete, what 1A is adopt a route map as our official map. And that's our big picture cause here. And then that utilizing best technology part, that's the 1B where, we have it in this GIS format now. And having that data there will allow it to be something that can be utilized in GPS. I think that's something we talked about several meetings ago about how exactly that works. So with the GPS, it is not something I'm an expert in, but I'll say that our goal is, once this wraps up and we say you all officially say this is the map. That is from a usage standpoint, step 1 for us is making sure that this is usable in GPS, and I think we're ready to do that based on my discussions with Doug and with our Office of Information Technology people. And then the third piece, Lewis, this may be something we reach out to you about in terms of fleshing out, but we just something to say, we're recommending essentially continuing this relationship of county to vehicle operators, so that as we've said, behavior change is the point here, and so we want to make sure that we have this map now. Are we really getting it out there the way we need to, and working with your industry to make sure that's the case?
No, that's great. We absolutely want to do that and support that effort.
So the camera locations, I think, is pretty straightforward. We that was something we really fleshed out at the last meeting. Again, essentially that document that we sent around before this one will be just sort of shoved into the report, and show the designated locations that we're saying are optimal for cameras at those the seven spots, the 14 slots, for lack of a better term. And then I think we've talked a lot about what we need to do at Wise Avenue, which is the end-to-end setup, as well as the Benson Avenue, which needs to, we want to explicitly state as a work group that, given the special circumstances there, it needs to have a lower height clearance. So for this one, I guess we can fill in that blank there, but this is very straightforward. No more than 7 at a single time. That will need to be part of the legislation that the council passes, and that is what we will recommend they include in the legislation. Number 4, I think we really finished fleshing out. I think it was at the May meeting, that just those vehicle exemption lists, right? This is really what we're recommending be used by the police department when they're looking for their, should X, Y, and Z not get a citation. I don't have in front of me what that list was, but obviously the full report will reflect what our discussion was at the May meeting about those exemptions. And then number 5, which I don't remember if this was April or May, but it was one of the recent ones we talked about this, was, we think that the county has this existing speed camera program where we send out citations. There's an opportunity to contest those citations for good cause. We think that building, you know, something alongside or very similar to that makes sense, and really just want to, you know, in 5B there, hammer home the fact that, you know, the citation process is clear, that when somebody gets a citation, they know what they need to do if they need to appeal, they know what they need to do if they get a liability, if they need to transfer liability. You know, that is a very important piece from the original state legislation. And sort of going specifically in 5C of what could make things easier, when we had our representative from the Speed Camera Ombudsman program with us, you know, she said, we'd love to have the speed camera citation review move to an online form instead of a thing you print out and send back. And we think that's consistent with, you know, making this an easy process to utilize, making it a clear thing to do. So that is why we included the recommendation for her specific ask of let's make this an online form and not make it more difficult in the 21st century to send things through the mail and whatnot. Again, folks, feel free to stop me if you have questions one by one, but I'll keep going otherwise. You know, this is the vote, you know, the piece that we talked about with the 3/4 ton signage, sort of not really reflecting what the county actually does and should be enforcing. You know, as Ron is not here, but we did, you know, let him know that, you know, we would certainly note that it was not unanimous approval, and make note of his concerns. I don't think his concerns are invalid, and that certainly it will be important to us to communicate to constituents why we think this is a good idea, which I am jumping around a little, but that is 6C, right? We don't want to necessarily just change all the signs and wash our hands of it. You know, we in the county executive's office will be more than happy to work with DPW&T to talk about how we communicate to the public through various media, through our Office of Community Engagement, make sure that this is not something being done in a vacuum or without information. And then jumping back to 6B, there's a specific, I always forget the exact wording. Give me 1 second. One of the lines in the state legislation says that the work group assists the county in evaluating existing signage and identifying locations where signage could be improved, right? So that's really two different things, in that when we talk about sort of the piece by piece evaluation, we are not equipped as a work group of 9 people to look at things on a case by case basis. And I think this may have been Greg's suggestion at some point, to say if we're going out and we're replacing all these signs one by one, recognizing that that won't happen overnight, you know, why not use that as an opportunity to take a look at each site while we're there and make sure things are properly placed, and etc. So that was the thought behind 6B, is that we recommend DPW&T use that process to complete that sort of evaluation. And then the second part is really reflected in 6D, the improvements beyond the 3/4 to 5 change, which we know will obviously hit a lot of locations. There is one example we've really discussed at length that we think this would flag, which is that turn at Trade Point, at I guess Bethlehem and North Point, where, you know, Ron has told us that, you know, his community feels that the signage really is the issue at that location. I reached out to him to ask if he had any other examples to highlight. He did have one at Belle Claire Road that I will include the exact language of what he said when we send it out. But I, you know, wanted to let him get the first stab at that as the authority on his community, and we'll sort of detail what he said about that location. But really, 60 is just going to say number one, number two. This is where the community feels it needs to be improved.
Yeah, hey Joel, in my mind, the one thing on this that's important is also as cameras are being put in at specific locations, that we ensure that the signage is very strong to clearly identify that this is a restricted route, right, with camera enforcement.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and maybe we need a 6E then to say exactly what you just said, that new signage created for the camera locations is clear and in the right place, etc. So if other folks are comfortable with that, we can add that in to this outline. Okay. And then the final piece is what I actually mentioned sort of towards the top of the meeting, is this doesn't necessarily one for one with any of what we were being asked to do, but like I said, we keep hearing over and over again, this is important to do. It's important to do this the way we're doing it, and it's going to cost money to do it. And we want to make sure that the council, as the ones who have the power of the purse in Baltimore County, know that we need more than existing resources and existing staffing to really get this up and running the right way, and that we as a work group make that clear. So that is what I have as an outline, and unless folks have other feedback, that is what will be built into the report. But obviously, the plan is to do the same thing we do with the interim report. I'll blow up your inboxes with version after version, and you keep telling me what you think needs to be changed until we get it right. I think we have a lot of a little more time built in this time. We're about a month and a half away from when this is due, and so my hope is that when we reach our meeting in August, that we have sort of sorted through email or offline or however what we think it is, and then nobody is surprised or really needing to make a lot of changes when we get there. Obviously, that is the prerogative if you arrive and there are things that have changed or things you have concerns about, but I'm going to do my best to get things to everybody as quickly as possible so that any feedback can get back to me as quickly as possible. And I'm also going to try to set a date for the final meeting very, very soon, and reach out to make sure it works for everybody, because we want to make as the time when we're sort of officially up or downing these things. I want to make sure that as many people as possible on the work group are present to do that. So I'm may be asking you all on Monday about what your August vacation plans are, so we can fill in the gaps and find a good day.
And the other important part about this last meeting is that, Joe would have sent the report back and forth several times to make sure everybody's comments are included. But I mentioned earlier, I'd like an overall vote from the committee, because I don't want to submit something to council and we don't have the full support of the committee as to the work that we've done, and that we all agree with what's in the report. So that will be an important meeting, the last meeting, to make sure that it's a unified front in submitting these recommendations. So I would be getting a vote at the very last meeting. All right, anybody got any questions, concerns, suggestions?
Thank you all. Put a lot of work into this. Appreciate it.
It's moving right along. Yep. All right, Joe, did I miss anything?
I think we got it.
All right, we got one more meeting to get this wrapped up and all done. I appreciate the work that everybody's done on it up to this date and the staff work that DPW&T staff has done, as well as the other agency staffs, is tremendously appreciated. So to all my staff that's on the WebEx, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Greg and your team, and Doug and your team, because there's no way we could have gotten this far at all without all of the resources that we put into this. So I appreciate it. Look for some emails from Joel, and thank you all so much for attending the meeting today. And with that, we'll adjourn. All right,
Thanks all.
thanks
See ya.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.